Good morning, everyone. This is Anthony Warren, curator of the Franklin Auto Museum in Tucson, Arizona. And today we're going to talk about this car behind me. Now, this is a very special car. This is a 1924 Packard Model 143 Touring. Now, this is the larger car. This is a 7-passenger Touring, and 1924 is the first year of the Packard straight 8 engine. Now, in a moment, I'm going to show you the engine bay, and we'll see this original straight 8. And then a little later on, we're going to take this car on a drive, and you'll join us so you can see what driving this car is like. Now, the first thing to point out, when this car was new, and it was bought brand new here in Tucson, Arizona, it was $7,200. Now, that was an incredible sum of money. In 1924, you could get a Model T Ford for about $300. So you do the math. This is a very expensive car. Now, her original owners were Mrs. Isabella Greenway and Mr. John Campbell Greenway. He was one of Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders and a very successful mining engineer here in Arizona. In fact, he founded the new Cornelia mine in Ajo and a few of the mines down in Bisbee, I think under the same name. Miss Isabella Greenway is a little more famous, in my opinion. She was our state's first female congresswoman. She served, I believe, 1933 to 1936. She was a Depression congresswoman. Huge Tucson figure. She was founder of our historic Arizona Inn. Now, that was founded in 1930, and she herself constructed the entire property. She was the head architect on that job. It's a fabulous building, and for most of its life, this car was parked out front of that. It was her personal car. A few notable people that have ridden in this car include FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt. There are books published explaining the friendship that Miss Isabella Greenway and Eleanor Roosevelt had. And they visited Tucson quite frequently, her and FDR. Now, when they got to the rail depot, of course there were no planes back then, it was by rail, she would pick them up at the rail depot in this car and take them to the Arizona Inn where they'd stay with her. So the car has quite a neat story. I'm kind of a geek for saying this. I know we're the Franklin Auto Museum, but I believe you don't pick a favorite car. Your favorite car picks you. And this has always been my favorite car. Ever since years ago I got a tour here before I started working here, I just fell in love with this car. It has such a great personality. And that's the thing, all of these old cars have personality. They're not just machines. You know, this car has lived 97 years, and boy, if she could talk. So I will stop this video. I'm going to pull you around to the engine bay, and we'll look at the straight 8 engine. We'll do a quick walk around of the vehicle. You could see Packard's signature radiator shell. That's how you know it's a Packard. Of course, this particular one says it right up front too, so that kind of eliminates the confusion if you're wondering, hey, what kind of car is this? The biggest thing to point out with this car is just how big it is, and it's hard to capture in a video frame here, but this is a very long car. It's almost exactly 20 feet long, very large. The hood alone, and you'll see when we do the driving video, it is like no other looking out over this hood. Just a huge car. Beautiful chrome brightwork, and of course that was not original in 1924. This would have had polished nickel, and you can polish nickel to be quite bright like that. But at some point in the early 1980s when this car was refurbished, it did have chrome. You could see you still have the original polished nickel door handles and hood latches. Of course, hood handles too. Let's look at the interior of this car, and it is open. It's a touring car. All right, see the beautiful original, I believe that's a walnut steering wheel. Now, a lot of people ask what those two levers on the wheel are. That is your spark advance on the left, so that controls where your distributor is. And on the right, that's your hand throttle. Now, these old cars have an updraft carburetor. This particular one is a 2-barrel. And that hand throttle is just a little bit easier on the engine to get going. 8 large cylinders and 1 rather small carburetor isn't a great mix, but hey, this was their first year. One of the things I love about driving this car is how roomy it is too. You really got what you paid for in 1924. I'm about 5'9", and this is a very comfortable driving position. Of course, that is original. Now, in the back, you have a very luxurious rear seat, and because this is the 7-passenger, you have these little jump seats too. So let me open the rear door here. We'll go ahead and fold one of these jump seats out. Just a moment. push this in, flick this out. And of course there's one on the passenger side too, but you could very comfortably fit 7 people in this car. It is that big. All right, continuing on, this car has the optioned disc wheels here. This car would have come standard with hickory spoke, they call it artillery wheels, and this was an upgrade. Of course, this car has no expense spared. We'll come around back here. I think the car has a beautiful stance from the rear too. You have that nice bright chrome center hub, little demi bumpers. And of course, those are real bumpers. If you do happen to back into something, and when this car was new, it did not have rear view mirrors, so that's rather plausible. They're effective. Beautiful side profile. Now this side of the engine bay is where a little more of the action is. So let me move our tripod up here. As I mentioned in the last video, we are not professional videographers. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. So I'm just moving this tripod down a little ways. Okay, I think that's gonna hold. All right, let's open her up. Okay. So this is this car's original engine. As I mentioned, 1924 is the very first year of the Packard straight 8. And prior to that, I believe for a short spell, Packard just had an inline 6, which was fairly typical of the day. And before that, they did have their twin 6, which is their denotation of a V12. They reinstated that later, but for the interim, this was the introduction of Packard's most iconic engine. When you think of Packard, you think of the straight 8. It's just a fabulous engine. It's around 350 cubic inches. It is large for a straight 8. And they used the same engine in Liberty tanks during World War II. I mean, it's just a bulletproof engine. Here we are 97 years later, and the thing still fires right up after 2 weeks of just sitting. Of course, we make sure this car gets what it needs. It's very well taken care of. But we just did some work on this car, so we replaced both radiator hoses. I did a full coolant flush, and it has 8 new spark plugs. Now the big thing with this car is the fluids. You really have to monitor the fluids. We just did regular maintenance, so an oil change, check the oil in the transmission, that's heavyweight gear oil, and change that out. And the rear differential as well, we flushed that. Now, let me show you, all around this car, I think the easiest ones to see are on the bumper. Let's see here if we can. This car has what's called grease fittings. And it explains this in the original owner's manual, but you do have to lubricate critical components of the chassis with old Alamite grease. Okay, so what we did, the old ones were kind of beyond repair. I don't know when the last time this car was greased was, but we put in all new grease fittings on this car, so it really steers nice. Just a pleasure to drive. So without further ado, I think we're about ready to take this one on a drive. So I'm going to kill the video here and reposition our tripod, and we'll get this thing on the road. Okay, so startup procedure on our 1924 Packard starts under the dash. There is a battery kill switch. Of course, our battery needs to be on to start this car up. Okay, meters. That's our ignition switch. We'll pull the choke all the way out. This car's been sitting for about 2 weeks. Open the throttle and the spark just a little. She's in neutral. The choke in, advance our spark, to go fill up the tires on this car. So we're just maneuvering over to our air compressor. Parking brake is set. We're just going to give her a little bit faster idle. Just for a little bit. Let her warm up. Right, this is Bill and John. Bill, I'll have you say hi first to the camera.
Hello, camera.
Now, Bill is our head mechanic. He's been here since 1950, and I'm kidding. We give him a hard time. Bill is incredible. Any one of these cars he keeps running flawlessly. Just great to have him. And John is fabulous. He has a 1930 Model A, and he is just a wealth of knowledge with these old cars. And as you could tell from the video, I'm a younger guy, I'm 20, and I am super lucky to have both these gentlemen. They are just wealths of knowledge. So without further ado, they're going to come on the ride with us. I think John is going to be our cameraman. So let's get this Packard on the road.
Show us how to grind the gears.
That's right.
It's on.
Okay. All right, so off we go.
die with a dream in my mind, a smile on my face and no trouble behind, and no cross on my grave to show my resting place. So I could listen to the wind blow, let blow.
next to us and not look at the car. I know. Crazy. Even grades? No waves, nothing. We're living in a world with diminished car people. Very sad.
Watch the moon.
parting thoughts for our viewers before we conclude this video. As you could see, the Packard, you have to shift very positively. And for those of you that aren't completely familiar with antique cars, you notice that I paused shifting. Well, that's because that transmission doesn't have synchronizers. They call that a crash box, and what I was doing, and I know you couldn't see my feet, but you do have to double clutch it. So if you're in first and you're shifting to second, clutch in into neutral. You cannot rush that car. You have to wait, I call it a 3 Mississippi car. You have to wait 3 seconds and then clutch in, go to second. Now, as we did pull in to the supermarket parking lot to turn around, you notice there was a little crunch. Well, when downshifting, it's kind of an operation. To go from third to second, if you're in third, you have to wait for the car to slow down, shift into neutral, rev the engine, and then very positively shift it into second. It's very easy to not do that seamlessly. I grounded a little bit. We did make it into second, so that's the important part. But you're not going to hurt that transmission. It's a very heavy-duty transmission. You really have to get that car down pat. For most of the time, though, you noticed I only downshifted once. That car is fine in third gear. It really pulls, and that's exactly what those cars were meant to do. Be it that was a luxury car back in its day, it was kind of, because downshifting was such an operation, they designed the car where you really didn't have to, unless you were in extreme circumstances. I very easily could have taken that turn and turned around in third gear and then just come to a stop and downshifted to first. But we thought we'd try it out. It was a good run for the car. But with that, we want to thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to take our 1931 Ford Model A Victoria out. And you notice I like the Packard, so I drove the Packard. That is John's favorite car. So John will be our driver next week. Stay tuned, and we hope to see you then.